We have like a very similar setup to last week, right? We've got our two cameras, our main shot here, and then our alternate shot here. Okay, main shot's on this monitor, alternate shot's on that. And this is very similar to what we were just working with the Anthony footage, right? Okay, so in addition to that, we have a boom mic that is over Aiden here, okay? That's one source of audio, all right? And that is going through this XLR cable here, across the floor, all the way over to this audio recorder here, okay? And then we're gonna have another source of audio, a lab, just like we had on Anthony earlier today, okay? And we're gonna mic up our interview subject with this, and that is wirelessly transmitted from the transmitter here to the receiver here that has a cable coming out of it going into another channel on our recorder. Okay, the recorder is an H4n Pro, okay, by the company Zoom. It's not like Zoom meetings, it's Zoom recorders, okay? So I want to talk about the settings for a camera. All right. If you remember in the videos, Alan and I were talking about shutter speed, your frame rate, okay, the exposure in terms of ISO, how bright the image was, okay, and then talking about the aperture of the lens, how wide the lens opening can be. I want to talk about all of those things today, okay? So we discussed them a bit last time. So with our main camera here, we've got our prime cinema lens on here, okay? So with a zoom lens and a prime lens, the difference between the two is a zoom lens, you can actually change the focal length, okay, and zoom in on something or zoom out from something. With a prime lens, it's one fixed focal length. All right, so if you want to get something larger in the frame, you have to move the camera toward the subject or pull it away if you want them to be smaller, okay? But with prime lenses, typically you can get a larger aperture, okay? Which is expressed in a term called f-stop, okay? So the lower the f-stop number, the wider the opening inside the lens can be, the wider the aperture can be, okay? So these lenses have a pretty darn good aperture, okay? 1.5, okay? If you can get something that is around 2 or below, that's a really good wide lens, okay? Zoom lenses tend to have much higher f-stop numbers associated with them. And the more you zoom in, the higher that f-stop number gets, okay? And the more closed down the lens is, and the more additional light you will need to get your subject to look properly exposed, okay? So, there are two rings on the lens itself, okay? We've got the aperture ring here, and you can see when I adjust this, it changes how exposed the image is, okay? And if you look at the background when I do that, it also changes the focal length, okay? So much more is in focus than when it's wide open, okay? When it's wide open, only Aiden is in focus. When I start to close it down and change that aperture and raise that f-stop number, the background becomes in focus too, okay? So if you're going for kind of placing focus on your subject and blurring the background, all right? And being able to turn, you know, a shelving unit with a bunch of equipment on it into something that you can throw a little light on and looks cool, okay? You want to go with a very shallow depth of field, and the prime lenses allow you to do that. So the camera kits that we have here, they all come with one of these cinema prime lenses. Okay, they're a 35 millimeter cinema prime lens, all right? And then we also have the focus ring on the camera, okay? So you can see, as I focus on different things, those things are highlighted, outlined in this color, okay, this kind of orangey red. That indicates that that thing is sharply in focus, okay? So as I do that, you can see like ends of Aiden's hair are being outlined and in focus, okay?
So that's why they're red.
And you can see the eyes right there have little highlights on them too. And that's really what you want to focus on primarily when you are interviewing somebody. Get the focus on the eyes perfect, okay? If their ear is a little bit out of focus because it's further back on their head, but their eye is in focus, you're good, okay? But you can see it's really easy to just have it slightly soft, okay? Oops, you know? Slightly soft the other way, okay? So you have to be very careful with it. And if your subject moves while you're doing the interview, leans forward, leans back, moves their chair, you're dead in the water, okay? So you need to keep them in one place. That's why you don't want to use a chair that they can lean back in, okay? Or that has wheels, or that swivels, okay?
You want pure still.
You want them still, okay? All right, so on the cameras themselves, okay, there is a display. Okay. Make sure this is loose enough. Okay. So there are all these buttons here and all this information on the display itself, okay? The main button that you're concerned with is the second one up from the bottom. It's got 3 lines on it, just like all sort of context menus do, okay? You hit that button and it brings up a display unit here, okay? Boom, okay? And there are all these different settings in here, okay? Video, EXT video, film, okay? And if you look across the top, there's a whole bunch of different tabs, okay? It's a touch screen, so there are right and left arrows here, so you can arrow through all the different settings that are available, okay? And the primary thing that you're concerned with is what you're going to be recording in, okay? So there's 2 main choices here, okay? You've got ProRes and Blackmagic RAW, okay? You want to choose ProRes, okay? So you just touch it, make sure that it's highlighted. If it was over here, you would just change it, okay? ProRes. And then there's different levels of ProRes across the bottom here. HQ, 422, LT, PXY for proxy, okay? You want to choose 422, okay? 422 is good, high quality. It's not as high quality as HQ is, but HQ is giant, okay? Much higher data rate. It's going to fill up your card like that, okay? So use the 422 setting, okay? Okay, so the next thing that you're concerned about is like your frame size, all right? So if you look down lower, you can see there is HD, Ultra HD, and then you've got 2.8K, 3.7K, anamorphic, all these different settings. And then up here we've got DCI 4K. We learned about the difference between UHD and DCI today, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I would stick with Ultra HD, okay? So you can not have to reframe anything in your 1080 timeline and not have those black bars at the top and the bottom and have to deal with that later. This would be the easiest thing for you to do, to stick with Ultra HD, okay? Okay. So the next thing, if I tab over just one, okay, you've got these different settings here, the dynamic range. Video, EXT video, and film, okay? So as I cycle through those, on here on the main monitor, you can see the image changes a little bit, right? The color changes a little bit. Looks a little more washed out. And when I go to film, it looks really washed out. This is called flat, okay? We're gonna work with footage like that so you know how to do it, but I highly recommend that you just record in the video setting, okay? Good color, you can still process it in post, doing color correction and color grading, but you don't have to do as much with it, all right? Excellent, okay. Okay, so then you have across the bottom the different types of destinations for recording, okay? So we're using SD cards with these, so you want to select SD down here. CFast would be a different type of card. There's USB for going to like an external recorder if you wanted to do that, okay? So we're going to stick with SD on that. And then you've got the project frame rate in between the two right here, okay? You want that to be set at whatever you want to edit it, okay? And this is kind of goes back to the video where Alan and I are talking about frame rates, okay? 24 frames per second is very common, and so is 30, okay? Frame rates outside of that are not as common. Yes?
What's the difference? Like, why would you use one?
Okay, I'm gonna tell you right now, okay? So 24 frames gives you a little bit longer exposure for every frame. There's only 24 in a second instead of 30, okay? So what that kind of does is give you a little bit more blur on whatever motion there is. It contributes to kind of a more cinematic and dreamy look, okay? Film is all 24 frame, okay? So it kind of adds to that sort of aesthetic if you're going for that, okay? 30 will give you sharper motion, okay? So if you if you're doing stuff that has a lot more motion in it and you want that to be more sharply captured, you might go with 30 instead, okay? There's not a big difference between the two, but there is a noticeable difference,
Right.
okay? So the footage that we're gonna be working with in the practice interview is all gonna be in 24, okay? So it's kind of a personal choice, but you really want to stick with one or the other. So if you're doing a 2-camera shoot, you want to have both of them in 24 or both of them in 30, okay? So you choose your project frame rate and make sure that it's 24, okay? And then I have to go over here to see what to do next. Okay, the next thing that we're concerned about is, okay, the monitor, okay? So if you go over to the next tab at the top here, the monitor, okay? Right now, I have these hooked up HDMI, okay? So what's going to the screen here is actually coming out here instead, okay? So I can choose LCD or HDMI for that, okay? And then I can have status text on or off, okay? Next screen for that is the focus assist level. Okay, so the lines that I was talking about that show you what's in focus and what isn't, it's called focus assist, okay? And the sensitivity of that is controlled by this slider down here, okay? So the more sensitive I make it, get to that, the more lines we will see, okay? So you can see there's a lot more there than if I desensitize it, okay? So I usually use it in the like 80 range or so, because you don't want to have everything just covered and not be able to see anything, okay? Okay. The next most important thing is in, wait, let me check this. Horizon. Okay, thirds. Yeah, we'll go thirds. Okay. So on the next tab over, have okay. All right. So you have the ability to choose your grids, okay? So right now I have no grid on whatsoever. So that's just shutting that off, okay? If I turn on thirds, the first one, I'm gonna see my rule of thirds. So when we were talking about having the eyes around the top third and the person located over toward 1/3 or the other on the side, it helps you to do that, okay? It doesn't get recorded, it just helps to set up the shot, to compose it, okay? The horizon shows you the very center, okay? And then you've got a crosshair here as well you can use, okay? And then you can just have a dot, that's the very center, okay? Most people just use the thirds, all right? Cool. Next is the audio, all right? So that's the next tab over here, okay? So there are two selectors up here, okay? And they have a lot of choices for each one. What you want is one to say camera left and one to say camera right, all right? And what that does is it enables the microphones that are right here on the front of the camera, okay? These two, you want to use those. So that's how you're going to get the camera audio that we got rid of today. You use it for syncing purposes, and then your good editing audio actually comes from your external recorder, okay? So you need to make sure that you get that camera audio on your file. So having this set up to camera left and camera right is super important. Otherwise you're not going to get that, okay? You have the ability to hook up external mics and all kinds of equipment to this that you can then set it to, okay? So you want to make sure you have that set to the internal microphone on the camera, okay? And it's just cycling through until you get to, and there's a lot of them, camera left and camera right, okay? You can have camera right and camera right on both if you want. Camera left and camera left. You want to have camera left, camera right, okay? Cool. And then you can actually adjust the level of them here. I usually go with the default at the center, but if the person's like really far away, you can raise the record level here manually to help you, okay? Cool. All right. Setup, you don't really need to, this is for like studio use, okay? You don't really need to worry about anything in here. We're not going to create any presets. We're not going to use any LUTs, okay? Cool. All right, so there's a button in the, or like a touchscreen option here in the very upper right. It enables and disables this menu system. It does the same thing as this button does right here, okay? Okay, so within the menu system, I wish this showed up on the monitor. It would make it so much easier. Does it? No, it doesn't. It doesn't. Okay. I'll get down here and show you. Okay. You can easily set your frame rate and your shutter speed, your ISO, and your white balance. Those are like the four main things visually that you're worried about in a camera, okay? And they have them on the display for that reason, okay? So in the upper left corner it says FPS. You can see that right there, FPS, 24 frames per second, okay? You hit that and you can change your frame rate right here with a slider or with these arrows, okay? Totally change it, all right? If your project is at 24, stay at 24, okay? But the other thing is, in this same menu, you have this little option down here for off-speed frame rate, okay? This is how you get high speed for slow-mo, okay? If you hit that, you can see, yeah, it doesn't show on the monitor. Can you see it down there? Yeah. 50/24. Do you see that? I'll hit it on this one too. Boom. Okay. So this one's set to 60, this one's set to 50. They're both high speed. Okay. So what this does is it gives you footage that's at a higher frame rate than your project. Okay. Then you bring it into your project and it inherently plays in slow motion. And it looks super cool. Okay. So if you're doing stuff like with the interview that we're doing, we shot a whole bunch of high frame rate stuff with Anthony dancing. And it looks really neat to be able to, like in your opening montage, you've got this cool music happening, and you've got this person doing these dance moves in slow motion. They're flying through the air. It looks really neat, okay? That's how you get it. It's by using the off-speed frame rate selector here. You click on the frame rate selector up here for FPS, and then turn on the off-speed, and you're shooting at a high frame rate, okay? And whatever you're doing during that will be in slow-mo, okay? The audio will not sync with it, okay? At all. So you need to be very careful when you do this. Don't shoot your interview in slow motion, okay? Shoot your B-roll, parts of your B-roll that way, okay? If you're trying to show something that's like a how-to almost, like let's go back to the woodworker, okay? If you're trying to show the person like using a bandsaw, and you're not going to be doing that as part of like an opening montage or a transitional thing that looks really cool in slow motion, and you're just trying to show what they're doing as they're talking about it, then shoot at regular frame rate. Turn this off, okay? But if you're doing something artistic and you want to show it in slow motion, then turn that on, okay? Just be conscious of what you're using, okay? We have people that shoot their interviews in slow motion all the time. And it gets very difficult to process. You have to do a frame or a speed adjustment first before you sync it, okay? All right, so that's your frame rate, okay? And then you have your shutter speed here. Okay, so if you remember in the video, we talk about normal shutter speed, okay, will be twice your frame rate. So if you look down there, the FPS is at 24 and the shutter is at 48, okay? 1/48 of a second, okay? Shut this one off. Okay, same thing here, okay? So that's standard, all right? So if you're shooting at 30, you want your shutter at 60. If you're shooting at 60, you want your shutter at 120, okay? And you can change that here with the different options that you have available to you, okay? Okay. The next thing is your ISO, okay? Across the top. This is how sensitive the sensor is on the camera. So you have a lens that's letting through light that's hitting a sensor inside the camera. How sensitive is that? Okay, that's what the ISO is, all right? So if I make it more sensitive, okay, it's going to increase the exposure quite a bit, okay? Generally, you want to go with the lowest ISO you possibly can that keeps your image exposed correctly, okay? And the reason is, as you increase the sensitivity of the sensor, you're going to get grain introduced to your image. Aiden, I need you not to step on the curved part. You can step on the flat part, but not on the curved part, okay? Okay, so
Sorry.
basically what you're doing with the ISO is it's like audio, it's like gain when you're increasing the audio strength of an audio clip when you're editing. You're actually increasing the strength of the waveform itself. With ISO, you're gaining the sensitivity of the sensor. Okay, so all the light that hits it is treated more powerfully, all right? So there's a saying that you'll hear people use, gain equals grain, okay? So the more sensitive that is, the more grainy the image is gonna be, okay? So usually you start to see grain at ISOs above like 3200. Yes.
Would you ever want it that high for some reason?
Yeah, if you have no other choice.
Oh.
Okay, and that's the only like you have lit the situation as much as you can. You have the lens as wide open as possible. Okay, and there's no other way you can get any other additional light. Then you're going to start increasing the sensitivity of the sensor to compensate for that.
Is that why, like, when it's dark, your phone gets like super grainy?
That's exactly why.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it's doing.
Wait, it's also called noise?
It's called noise as well. Yes, grain, noise, pixelation almost sometimes. I mean, it gets really bad.
It just looks
You know.
like little individual dots.
Exactly, and that's the sensor just trying to make sense out of that little light. So, if you can create a situation like we have here where you've got additional light, all right, you've got a good lens that you can open up a lot, you're gonna inherently have that ISO low, okay, which will give you a good, clean image without that noise or grain in it, okay? So the next step is white balancing, okay? You can see there's, the next thing over is WB there, okay? All right, so there are a whole bunch of presets for that across the bottom here when you hit that, all right? And this is just like it is on a film or a still camera, okay? DSLR or mirrorless. You have all these presets for outdoor, indoor, fluorescent lights, in the shade, you know, cloudy day, all that kind of stuff, okay? What you really want to do is manually white balance that camera, okay? Force it to look at something that's white and make sense out of that instead of using a preset, okay? So we're going to use, you can use just a white piece of paper for this, but we have these studio white cards, same kind of thing, okay? But you can use a plain white piece of paper for this, it will also work. So before you start shooting, you want to white balance your camera, okay? So Aiden, I need you to hold this right about there, okay? Actually, let's move it there, okay? Toward the center, okay? And I'm going to go into the auto white balance function here, hit that, and then it comes up with this button right here, update white balance. Okay, so I'm going to do that on this camera. Okay, and you can see right now it's at 3950K. Okay, so I'm going to hit auto white balance, update, and it changed slightly to 3700. Okay, so it's looking at that color white and making sense of that and treating all the other colors based on what it thinks white is. Okay, so if I held up a different color card and told it that that was white, it's going to change the color balance of everything else. All right, so usually you want a white balance on something that's white. Okay, the whitest thing you possibly can find. Okay, does that make sense? So when you're doing that with two different cameras like we have here, you want to have both of them pointed at the same thing at the same time with the same lighting conditions, and you want to have the same ISO set on them, okay? So that the sensor has the same sensitivity on both cameras, okay? Thank you, Aiden. So if you have one camera set at 400 and the other one set at 100 and you do that white balance, the numbers are going to be pretty different and your color is going to look different and you're going to have to do more to balance the color of your cameras in post, okay? So the whole idea of fixing it in post, it's doable, yes, but you want to do that as little as possible, okay? Yes?
When you use Premiere, do people usually color grade in Premiere, or do they do it in something else?
There are kind of multiple options for that. A lot of people do it in Premiere using Lumetri, their built-in color tool, okay? But there's also another program that a lot of people use called DaVinci Resolve,
Yeah.
okay? And you can do more than just color grade in there. That's what most people use it for. It's actually a full-on editor as well.
Yeah.
It's just very different than most of the other editors. It has gained a lot of popularity in the sort of general use sphere, but you're going to find that the vast majority of its use in the industry is just for color grading.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Done all of this, and you actually want to record, you can hit the record button at the bottom of the screen here, okay? Or you can hit the record button on the top front of the camera here. It's kind of at like the same position that a shutter button would be on a regular DSLR camera, okay? And that will start and stop your recording, okay? And when you do that, you can see it starts running up here, okay? So if you're doing your interview and you don't see that running in red, it means you're not recording, okay? So make sure you check that, okay? And make sure that you constantly are checking your focus to make sure that your subject is sharp, okay? Definitely want to remain conscious of that, okay? So those are the main settings in your camera, okay? So your frame rate, super important, okay? And then your shutter speed is based on your frame rate. Whatever your frame rate is, you're gonna double that, that's gonna be your shutter speed, okay? And then you've got your ISO, which is the sensitivity of your sensor. You wanna have that as low as possible so that you don't get the noisy, grainy image, all right? And then you want a white balance, okay? So that you can get the color balance proper across the whole spectrum for the situation that you're in. So if you shoot your interview in like one setup in your house or in the person's shop or where they work or whatever, and then you're gonna go get some B-roll, you need to white balance when you move, okay? Especially if you go outside, then it's completely different. Or you do the interview outside and then you go and shoot the B-roll inside. You're gonna have an image that looks really orange or really blue when you do that, okay? So make sure you white balance for every location that you go to, okay?
That's great.
What's that?
That's great.
It is, yeah, and it's necessary, okay? And the thing is that this is normal for doing this kind of production. What it is not normal for to ever have to think about is when you use your phone.
Yeah.
Your phone does all of this,
It just sounds
okay? You don't have to think,
Thank
all you do
God.
is hit record, that's it, okay? Now there are tools that you can get to crack your phone. Filmic Pro, for example, is one that you can install on an iPhone, and it will allow you to manually control all of these things. You can get a much more cinematic look out of your phone, okay? But people are not used to thinking this way. They're used to just record and go,
Right.
you know? And that's what Alan says at the very beginning of the video. He's like, you want to just turn it on and go, and you can't, okay? You need to really set it up and think about it. But that's how you get this killer look, you know? Just by doing that. Okay, makes sense?
Yes.
Okay, any questions about this?
Why,
Okay.
why is like it red right there?
Right here?
It's kind of like red sometimes.
Yeah, and that's an indication of what is in focus. Okay? So if I change the focus to what's in the background, that turns red, okay? And as I focus more on Aiden, he turns red. It's to help you to understand what's in focus, okay? It's a lot easier to see what's sharp and what isn't on a giant monitor like this. But when you're looking at a small screen like this, it's much more difficult. So that helps you to do that, okay? Cool. All right. And these are pretty large screens for, a handheld camera. There are some, they're half that size. Imagine trying to check the focus on that. That'll give you trouble, definitely. Okay? So remember, you can cycle through the screens, enter the menu system, okay? And then cycle through the screens with the tabs at the top here, okay, to set up everything, okay? And then once you've got that dialed in, then you can use the quick buttons here at the top to dial in your frame rate if you want to adjust it. If you want to go to high speed, hit the frame rate and then use the off speed toggle at the bottom. Change your shutter, change your ISO and your white balance all at the top. Okay, cool. All right, so let's talk about audio. Aiden, I love you, but you're not dressed right for this. Okay. I don't know.
How does anyone dress right?
John, come on over. And can I get you to? We'll adjust this for you. And can I get you to button everything up there? Not all the way to the top. Okay. All right. So we'll raise this up just slightly. Okay. Let's turn this back around. Pretty good. Okay. You are a little bit taller than everybody, so we're going to raise this up just slightly. Okay. And this one too. Okay, that's pretty good. Okay, go ahead and look right here. Yeah, that's pretty darn good. Okay. Cool. And Mike, bring you over just a little bit there. Okay. Cool. You're inherently in focus. Like, you're really good. Nice and sharp. Okay. So, number one, I want to make sure that this isn't in the frame. Okay. It's pretty close. Okay. You can see. I don't have to move my finger down much to have it actually enter the frame, okay? You want to get it as close as possible to the subject's mouth without it being in the frame, okay? And usually over their head, slightly in front, angled back will give you the best sound quality possible, okay? So, boom mic, and then I've got the XLR cable that's hooked up to it, connected to the end of the mic. It runs down here and then across the floor into the recorder. Okay? Cool. All right. So, just to show you, this is the cable that I'm talking about. XLR, okay? This is like a professional audio cable, okay? It's got 3 pins in it, all right? And there's a male side, and then they've got the female side as well, okay? So on the recorder itself, you've got an input that looks very much like that, okay? Okay, and you're going to take the end of your cable and put that in there. Okay? And then we've got the same sort of situation with our wireless lav. Okay? Transmitter going to a receiver that goes to a cable that goes into the recorder. So we're going to put this lav on John. Okay? So you can see, if you guys want to come around this way, it'll be easier for you to see what I'm doing with him. Okay? Okay. So his shirt has one side that goes over the other. It's like everybody's does, okay? So you want to have your microphone set up so that the clip can go behind, okay? Like this. All right? And clip onto that. I'm not going to leave the cable out like this, okay? But this is how you want this set up, okay? So if the shirt crossed over the other way, then you would take the top off of the microphone here, okay? And then there's a little sort of spring, and then you can take the microphone out, turn it over, and then you can use this the other way, okay? I'm not gonna do that because I don't have to. Just happen to look out with you, okay? All right. So, can you button that one too? Okay. So when you're miking somebody up with a lav, you're going to kind of be in their personal space. You're going to be touching them, okay? You kind of want to explain what you're doing before you just go grabbing their clothes, okay? And touching their body, okay? So you want to explain to them, John, I'm going to mic you up. It's a lav. I'm going to clip it onto your shirt. I'm going to run the cable through the inside, okay? So that John isn't like, dude, what are you doing, okay? Like I'm not comfortable with this, all right? So this becomes really kind of uncomfortable if you're doing this with somebody you're not familiar with or somebody who is of the opposite sex, okay? So usually in a situation like this, I would ask the person to run the microphone up through their shirt, okay? Rather than me doing it, okay? So what I'm gonna ask you to do, John, is take the cable here and run it in through here and out the bottom, okay? And have them pull that through, okay? And then we'll clip it on, okay? So you can just clip it on like this. Get it to do it, yeah. But then you can see the cable's kind of hanging out here, kind of obnoxiously, okay? So what you want to do is take it and loop it like this, okay? Let me do that one more time, okay? I'm just going to loop it through like that, okay? So now what I can do is clip this on with the cable clipped behind and it has this nice little U. Looks very professional that way, okay? It also holds the cable onto the clip itself, okay? So it doesn't just yank the whole thing down, okay? All right, then I'm gonna plug it in. And I'm gonna turn on the transmitter, okay? So to do that, all you have to do is hold down the power button here and wait for the lights to come on. Cool. Okay, hang on to that for a minute. Now I'm going to turn on the receiver over here, making sure that's plugged in here, okay? Hold down the power button, wait for the screen to come on. Boom. Then looking at the screen, I hate that this is so small, but it'll be posted. You can see that the battery life for the transmitter and the receiver both show here, okay? TX is for transmit, RX is for receive. And the level of the microphone itself shows here, okay? There is an adjustment to make the mic more or less sensitive on the bottom. It says dB, okay, decibels, okay? When I hit that, you can see that this triangle in the lower left gets more or less filled, indicating higher or lower sensitivity on the mic, okay? Usually go with the bottom of the middle on that, okay? So now I've got the boom setup, the lav setup, okay? I want to turn on the audio recorder, okay? You need to make sure you have a card in it that fits in the SD card slot on the side, okay? Just like that, all right? And then the power switch for it is here on the side. It says hold, and then there's a power sort of symbol. You just pull the slider down towards the power symbol until the screen comes on. And it takes forever to boot up. It takes a long time, Okay. So while that's happening, I'm gonna hide the mic. So I want to put it somewhere out of frame. Okay. So why don't we just slip it into his pocket here? Okay. Okay. So now I want to make sure that I have the audio recorder set up properly. And there are a bunch of different settings in here, okay? You can use the microphones that are on the top of it or the inputs at the bottom, okay? And in order to do that, you have to set up the menu, okay? So there's a menu button on the side. You hit that, and it brings you into the menus, all right? I don't care. There's a little wheel here to navigate through the menus, all right? And it's a push wheel. So if you get to something that you want to change, okay, you just push on the wheel and it goes into that selection, okay? So I'm going to input and I'm pushing in on the wheel, okay? So there's low cut, compressor limiter, monitor, 1-2 link, level auto, all these different choices, okay? Phantom, plug-in, okay? So low cut is the first one you're concerned with. I'm gonna go into that, and I'm gonna go into input, and I'm gonna, inherently it's set to off. I'm gonna go to 80 Hertz. Okay, so what does that mean, low cut? What that does, it's basically an EQ that's built into the recorder, and it cuts all of the super low frequencies. So the air conditioning hum in here, for one, is a super low frequency, okay? The wind that might be happening is also a low frequency, all right? The person's breath that might come down and hit the microphone would be another super low frequency that you're gonna help to cut out using that onboard EQ, okay? Cool. So to get back out, once you've made a change, you just hit menu, okay? And now I'm gonna go to the 1-2 link. That's the next thing you're concerned with, okay? Wheel into that, and inherently, usually it's turned on. You wanna turn it off, okay? 1-2 link means that the two inputs are one thing together. You get everything on both channels, and you want them to be separate from each other. So if you turn that off, you get one source on the left channel and one source on the right channel. Okay? Cool. All right. Awesome. Okay. Level auto. What that is it's a built-in level control that automatically raises and lowers the level based on what it thinks is right, okay? Leave that off. Don't ever have that on, because it's gonna make your video sound louder and softer all the time, okay? It's not very good, so just turn it off and do it yourself. Mono mix, off. Leave that off. It's off by default. MS matrix, we're not gonna mess with that. Has nothing to do with what we're gonna do. Just leave it alone. Phantom power is important, okay? By default, that's off. You wanna go down to 48 volts and turn that on. So what is phantom power, okay? This microphone does not have a battery, okay? It's actually powered through the cable from the recorder. So I showed you there was 3 pins inside the cable, and the mic is called an XLR cable. The L and the R are for left and right audio, and the X is for power, okay? So the recorder actually powers the mic using this thing called phantom power, okay? Through the cable. So you wanna have that turned on or it's not gonna work, okay? Plug in. We don't have the AC adapters for this, so we have to leave that off. I wish we did, that would make it easier, okay? And that takes care of your input settings, okay? We're gonna go to record, okay? The format. This is chief important thing, okay? It defaults to 44.1/16. That means 44.1 kilohertz, and we edit in 48, right? Okay? And then 16 is 16-bit, all right? Which is a pretty good quality, but 24-bit is a lot better. Okay, so we're gonna use 48 and 24. So we're gonna wheel into that and choose 48, 24-bit. Okay. Boom. Careful. Okay. Auto record, we're gonna leave that off. Okay. That's where the recorder would just detect sound and start recording. So no matter what was happening, if a plane flew over or whatever, it would start recording. Okay? We don't want to use that. Okay? Pre-record, usually leave that off. What that is the recorder constantly records, I think it's like 5 or 6 seconds all the time. It's just always doing that so that when you actually hit record, it actually started recording 5 seconds ago. So if somebody starts talking and you hadn't hit record yet and you all of a sudden hit it, you might have missed the beginning of what they said, but with the pre-record on, it would capture it. Okay? Does that make sense? Up to you if you want to do that and cycle in, turn it on. Okay? I don't usually use it. File name, leave it at the default, and that's it. Okay? All right, tool, we don't need that. Play mode, we don't need that. System, we don't need that. SD card, okay? Wheel into that. And you can find out how much is remaining on the SD card here by choosing the remain function, and it shows. I've got 15 hours left. Okay, I think I might have enough. All right, you can also format the card from here. So if you get a card and it has a whole bunch of stuff on it already because somebody else used it and they didn't format it after they were done, you can just go into format and then it says, are you sure you really want to do this? Yes. Okay, and it will format the card, wipe it clean. Okay, and then you're going to get only your stuff on it. Okay? And it takes a long time. The next level up from this is called an H6. It is miles better than this. It is such a better piece of, I wish they had them here. They're so awesome. Okay. The display's rad. You have meters, like everything's a button and a wheel. It's not all these menus. It's really cool. But they're more expensive.
How much more?
This is like usually around the 2 to 250 range, and the H6s are usually like 350, 400. Yeah.
I mean, for 100 more, I think I'd do that.
I would too. That's exactly what I did. Okay. So now we've got everything dialed in, and you can look at the face of this, okay, and see that I've got left and right, okay, and 2 channels showing. 1 and 2 are on here, okay? And I've got 48, come on, light up. 48 and 24 showing, okay? It says no data because there's nothing on the card yet, okay? And then you can see the remaining record time down here, 15 hours and 21 minutes, okay? Now, I don't see any signal, all right? I have my mics on, but I don't see any signal on the screen. This is another weird thing about these. In order to actually see it, you have to arm it first. You have to press record. It's not actually recording. See that it's flashing right now? All it is doing is showing you what it would be doing if it was recording. Okay? And this burns so many people because they press record and think they're recording and they're not. You have to hit it twice. Okay? And then it shows you your levels. Okay? And just like in editing, you're trying to go for about -12, okay? So if you record properly and you get a -12 level, you're not gonna have to do much in editing, okay? It's a really good balance between noise and signal, okay? Okay, so John, I want to test my levels with you now, okay? So I'm going to ask you to tell me what you had for breakfast, go through the alphabet, tell me about your day, you know, have a conversation with you while I'm looking at my levels to make sure that what I'm getting is good, okay? And then at the same time, I'm going to be listening to that. Okay, I've got my headphones plugged into the headphone jack on the side, because just looking at the level isn't enough. Yeah, it could be really good level, but what if there's static in it? What if there's a bunch of noise coming from his clothes? What if there's something that I can't see in terms of sound that is wrecking this? You need to actually listen to it at the same time, okay? So, John, why don't you go ahead and tell me what you had for breakfast?
I had eggs, some sausage, and some pancakes.
Okay, that's awesome. All right, so I noticed that I had a pretty high level, okay, on my boom mic, okay? So the boom mic is on the second input here, number 1 and number 2. If I hit the number 2 button, it brings up my record level, okay? Just flashes on the screen. And I can change that with the record level buttons here. So if I hit 2 and then go down, I can change the sensitivity, okay? Just like the ISO, okay? It's the same thing, all right? All right, so John, tell me one more time. Detail breakfast for me.
Some scrambled eggs, some sausages that were small, and very fluffy pancakes.
Okay. Very fluffy pancakes. Okay. So while he's doing that, I'm going back and forth between the first and second inputs, changing the record level on them. Okay. So I raised the record level on the first input slightly, and I lowered it quite a bit on the second one because it was really strong. Okay. So if you have that set to auto, it's just going to keep fighting you the whole time. That's why you want to leave it off and totally manual so you can control it, okay? And his voice sounds strong, it sounds clear, I don't hear static, I hear some of the AC, unfortunately. But I'm relatively assured at this point that what I'm going to get is good, okay? So don't just hook it up, see that there's signal there and go without listening to it, okay? You have to check it, all right? And then just like we did here, do a test record, okay? So, do a test record. John, tell me what you had for breakfast.
I had some scrambled eggs, some sausages, and some pancakes.
Okay, awesome. So great.
Forgot to say specific
Okay.
small sausages.
Oh my bad.
Okay, and then you can actually look at the playback, okay? So look at the playback. Okay, use this button right here. Okay, boom. Hit that, and there's nothing recorded in this one, but once you hit that, it brings up here on the screen, okay, the last thing that you recorded, all right? And then you can actually hit the playback button and view it. And there he is, talking about his breakfast, okay? And it looks good, okay? Cool. All right, makes sense?
Yep.
Okay, so to get out of that screen, let me just turn this around so you can see. To get out of the playback screen, you just hit the stop button, okay? And that'll get you out of there. look at this class. All right. Hey, Aiden. Okay. Back to John. Cool. Okay. So once you're ready to do this, okay, you're going to make sure that your subject is comfortable. You're going to set them at ease and say, John, tell me, and I'm interested in, let's say you're a skater, okay? I'm really interested in what you're doing skate-wise, okay? So tell me, how'd you get started?
Oh, buddy.
Tell me, how'd you get started having breakfast every day?
Oh, how'd I get started?
Yeah.
So, it started when I woke up at 5 a.m. and then I had to clean my dog's cage because they're still puppies, and then after that, I just started cooking.
Cool. Okay. So this is the dynamic you want to set up. Okay? You're not this person who's probing, trying to find out if, you're just having a conversation with them.
Tell me what I want to know.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. You don't want to be like that. Okay? So then once you're ready, you start recording on both your video and audio device, and you start having a conversation with the person. And then you are always checking your focus, listening to what you're recording as you're doing it, okay? So you can see, it's kind of a lot to be the one person doing all of this and interviewing the person. That's why working in a team is really awesome. Because you can have one person that's doing the technical stuff and one person that's really dealing with the talent, the subject, your interviewee, okay? Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. Cool.
I have a question.
Yes.
When you press twice on the record button here, does the light still flash or does it do something?
No, it becomes constant. Now it's recording. And you can see that the numbers themselves are actually counting up just like on the camera, okay? And the button itself, the light is solid. And then to stop, you just hit stop. Okay? Cool. All right. Any questions about any of this? No? Are we good? Are you zooming in on my foot? Okay.
This is for the bloopers.
So this concludes camera settings and audio setup. That is the deal, okay? The SD card that you get for your recorder cannot be larger than 32 gig. That is an inherent limitation to this
I think I already
device.
said this, but to be honest, when will you ever need more than 52 gigabytes?
No, you wouldn't. I mean, this is a 16 that's in here, and it's got 15 hours of recording on it.
Yeah.
Okay, so a 32 is going to get you, around 30. All right, so not a limitation worth worrying about. And the card that you buy that's that size is going to be super cheap. Okay, with the cards that you get for the cameras, you want to get something that's faster. Okay, class 10 or above. And if you look on Canvas at the recommendation that I made, it's basically kind of middle of the road, perfect for this. Okay, I would recommend starting with a 128 and going up from there because you need a decent amount of record time, and 128 gig is going to get you that. Okay, but if you want to get a 256 or a 512, go for it. The price difference is not that much. Okay.
Except when you get to terabyte.
Yeah, when you get to a terabyte, then it gets really
That's what I
expensive.
was saying,
Yeah.
terabyte.
But you need one for
Okay,
each
no.
camera.
One for each camera. That is correct.
Plus one for the recorder.
Plus one for the recorder. That's right. Okay. Okay. Cool. Has everybody watched the camera training videos that Anthony did?
I think I did. It was like talking about like settings.
In
Yes.
August, in the middle of August.
Okay. Please watch those again. Okay. There's a lot it's the same information that I just covered and then some. Okay. So please watch those. Okay. That will help you.
Is that a wrap?
That's a wrap, people.